I would like now to introduce today's presenters. Rita N. Sonny is Everest Group's Principal Analyst for Impact Sourcing and Sustainability. Her focus delivers a triple bottom lens of people, planet, and profits to global services market research, beginning with an in-depth examination into impact sourcing. Arpita Dwivedi is a senior analyst with the Information Technology Services team and manages Everest Group's sustainability technology and services offerings. Arpita's responsibilities span leading engagements with service providers, enterprises, and technology vendors across sustainability, enablement, technology, and services ecosystem. Meenakshi Narayan is an analyst with the Information Technology Services team at Everest Group. She leads the conversation around sustainability enablement technology services and engages with service providers and enterprises across this market. And with that first ever all-women-led webinar, I would like to turn things over to Rita.
Thank you so much, Raphael. I hope that's the last time I speak on mute. Welcome everyone to this webinar. And yes, we are extremely excited to be an all-female panel here. We're also excited about the topic. Sustainability is obviously there in my designation, but it's something that we're all very passionate about here at Everest Group and this panel specifically. So to get straight into the agenda, today we're going to be covering specifically the role of technology in sustainability enablement. It's a lot of words and it's a nuanced view of what it is that we're talking about in particular here, but beginning the conversation around sustainability and how it's become so strategic and forefront in the minds of so many different businesses, from companies that are buying services where they're saying we're making all of these proclamations and targets, setting all these huge targets, to the companies that are providing the services to help them meet those targets. So it's a pretty broad agenda prompted by this global pandemic, by the uptick in attention to climate change. We've really brought this conversation to the forefront. So for this first section, we're going to focus in on this background, the actual technology itself being an enabler in combating the issues, as well as leveraging the benefits surrounding sustainability as a concept. So I think with that introduction, I feel like we don't really need much of an introduction because you've chosen to be here. You know why it is that this is such an important topic. I think it would be great to start to get to know you as an audience before we really dive deeply into this topic. And so we'd like to start with this poll. We're looking at what are your top ESG objectives, environment, social, and governance objectives. So in this poll, you're going to pick one option from each category: environment, social, and governance, and tell us what is your top priority at this moment. And Arpita, you've been such a great partner in bringing to light much of what we've been discussing in sustainability across Everest Group. I'd love to get your sense of what today and how you see the space evolving.
First of all, thanks a lot, Rita, for setting up the stage so beautifully for our conversation today. And certainly, I cannot emphasize more on the impetus that sustainability is receiving globally. And specifically, what I feel has changed in the last decade on these sustainability conversations is what our conversation today is going to be focused on, which is the advancements on technology and the rising emerging digital technologies, especially the technologies that are enabling sustainability for the enterprises globally. And I think what better way to start the conversation than getting the definition of sustainability right, align the definition that we have for sustainability, what the audience has for sustainability. I mean, considering all the market conversations that we are having, we have seen a tilt towards more environment aspect of sustainability. But within Everest Group, we are taking a triple bottom line approach where we try to focus on environment, planet profit, as well as the people aspect of sustainability. And let's see what we have in the poll results.
Sounds good. I'm going to close the poll in just a couple seconds. We've got most of the folks that have that are here that have participated, but even if you're confused, choose maybe the one that you're personally most interested in, and let's close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Oh, have we already closed the poll? I'm sorry. This is my first poll to run. All right, so Arpita, we have some interesting results here. Can everyone see the poll results? Yes. Okay, great. So under environment, carbon footprint and its management being the tippy top, I don't think that's much of a surprise. Under social, I wonder if people had a harder time choosing. No, DEIB, the diversity conversation. I think if we were to break it up into those 4 words, I also guess that the focus would end up being on diversity. So that's also not much of a surprise. And on the governance piece, reporting, that's pretty much what we've been hearing as well, right, Arpita?
Yes, definitely, Rita. And I think it's considering when I just talk about the social aspect of sustainability, when it comes to occupational health and safety in the asset heavy industries, it's been a common mature use case for sustainability. But I'm very happy to see the positive response that we have seen for DEIB specifically being recognized as a key social impact objective for organizations.
Very true, very true. Great. So I think now that we are level set on what it is that our audience is interested in, I think we can go into a little more detail on how we here at Everest Group are defining sustainability with our purpose framework. So what you'll notice in this purpose framework is we've really taken a lot of the dialogue and debate and conversation that's been on triple bottom line, people, planet, profits, and the emerging investor conversation around ESG, environment, social, and governance. And we brought the 2 together with a focus, because most of the impact, most of the risk mitigation, most of the opportunities are in people and planet. We really wanted to center our depiction of this concept on those 2 things. And as Arpita said, we do see a lion's share of the conversation on the environment, but as a people-driven industry, we really wanted to say that there's a huge amount of opportunity to also keep the focus on people. Overlaying both of those concepts are the fact that we need to keep a focus. These ideas are not going to scale or have any legs if profit is not forefront and integrated within the purpose framework. And we also wanted to add business case as part of the conversation because it doesn't always exactly tie to profit. So having a business case to do these activities is also critical. And finally, governance as the overarching framework integrated into this conversation is what we wanted to depict in this framework. So let's get into kind of what it is that we mean specifically around 3 of these 4 aspects. Meenakshi, can you get us started?
Thanks a lot, Rita. Thank you, Rita and Arpita, for setting up the context. I think the confluence between the people and planet is extremely important for sustainability But what we are seeing in the market right now is a heavy tilt towards the E aspect of ESG. And that is because I think climate change, the natural calamities, and the extreme weather events are becoming one of the top risks on the business leaders' radar. And environmental problems are actually becoming a universal problem to deal with. So when we talk about the environmental services here, I'll again like to highlight that these are underpinned heavily by technology. And when we have to talk about these services, I think the most important is decarbonization. The polls results were also, aligned with this finding. So when it comes to decarbonizations, the service providers are assisting their clients in measuring, monitoring, and managing their carbon footprint. They're also helping them in their resource management, their water, energy, and waste footprint management. Another important area that we are seeing is supply chain management, where visibility and transparency is becoming extremely important to reduce the environmental damaging in sourcing raw materials. Service providers are also helping their clients in biodiversity conservation, plastic eradication, forest monitoring, and afforestation activities. The another important area is sustainable IT, and the IT sector is actually responsible for around 4% of the global GHG emissions. So embedding sustainability in a client's infrastructure, IT infrastructure, their applications, their processes becomes extremely important to manage the environmental footprint that these clients have. So these are the major groups that we are seeing when it comes to environmental services. I would request Arpita to throw some light on the people-led services and how profit business cases are generating around these services.
Thanks a lot, Meenakshi. And if we go to the next section, which is the people aspect of sustainability. When we talk about the people aspect of sustainability, we include each and every stakeholder that a corporate or a government interacts with. Be it your consumers, be it your employees, be it your investors. The stakeholder capitalism, a very common phrase used across global organizations these days. The societal impact of sustainability is not restrained towards your investors or your consumers. It includes all the communities that organizations are interacting with. And there's a positive, I already highlighted it before, that health and safety in asset heavy industries is one of the mature use cases that we have seen. Increasingly, and as a positive, it's a very positive aspect of people aspect of sustainability. Increasingly, we have seen multiple inquiries from our clients dedicated towards how technology can be used for employee well-being and the mental wellness of the employees as well. Accessibility is another very important area, especially digital accessibility, assistive technologies at the workplace. These are very important areas where we are seeing multiple advancements, use case and case studies currently being in demand when it comes to people aspect of sustainability. Now coming to DEIB, if I can just take a minute and quote one of the sustainability leaders we got a chance to talk to in the last few months during our peak research assessment. He said, in order to ensure that the social aspect of sustainability gets the importance it deserves, they just motivate the clients by saying, treat exclusion as pollution. And I think that quote stayed with me. And Rita, you have been very close to DEIB, and I'd like if you would want to add your view on how these conversations are evolving.
I love that quote, Arpita. And actually, I think doing the analogy between what's happening with the E is really helpful. I think the other quote that I've heard from our colleague, our friend Ronak, is to think about the scope 1, 2, and 3 on the S front as well. So as we get into this conversation, so yes, this is certainly where my passion lies, and a lot of the work that we've been doing around impact sourcing has really highlighted this work. And I think today's kind of an auspicious day as well, where we're going to be dropping our deep study on that today. So yeah, thank you for pulling that in.
Moving on to the profit aspect of sustainability. If we can go to the next slide. Yes. So when it comes to the profit aspect of sustainability, most of the conversations of the market sentiment we have seen, many leaders see initial expense related to sustainability as a roadblock. And the prevailing myth across industries is that sustainability initiatives might hurt the bottom line. However, in based on our research and our conversations with the enterprises, we do feel that it's quite the opposite, and sustainability can drive profits for organizations by not just through operational efficiency that can improve your profitability. It can increase your top line growth by targeting specific. For example, if I just take retail industry, there are many firms, there are many CPG firms who are specifically targeting green conscious, environment conscious consumer segments and charging a premium for them to increase the profitability and revenue of their organizations. And the other aspect is sustainability for competitive distributions. We have seen multiple organizations who not just consider sustainability as a good to have aspect, but by incorporating sustainability in their operations, they are driving their messaging in the way that to attract the consumer segments who are focused on sustainability. So I think the profit aspect of sustainability is something that really came out in the spotlight across our research. And through this conversation, if we are able to convince even the 10% of the audience to understand the profit aspect of sustainability, I will consider this conversation a success.
I love those measures of success, Arpita. But I think that the next part of the conversation is how does it really happen? And I think just putting into context that there is a maturity process in becoming purpose driven or having, aligning to the purpose framework. And we think that there's, we've noticed, we've seen through our research that being very deliberate about that process and seeing yourself in these phases is really very important. And most of this is looking at what are the drivers, how are you measuring it, who are the people that are behind these initiatives, creating ecosystems, creating governance practices, and then our favorite topic, enabling data and technology across these systems. So here and I think anyone who's been with us on this journey and thinking about and talking about sustainability has seen this slide. It's a very busy, there's a lot of content on this slide, and as everyone knows, we will be sharing the deck after the webinar. But just to really hone in on the fact that at the beginning, level 1, where there's a focus on social responsibility, it's much more on the lines of meeting corporate social responsibility objectives, having more of a social aspect and oftentimes philanthropic aspect. Here, the actual business integration is a little less and therefore often very ad hoc. As we get into level 2, I think we've touched on this topic already, that risk mitigation is forefront on the minds, that there's now beginning to be some reporting, there's a lot more focus on the compliance and mandates that are there. There's a value of loss avoidance due to the non-compliance, seeing the risks in missing those regulatory requirements. And measuring and reporting is getting a little more robust, and data, therefore, is getting to be more important. Level 3 is where we see the majority of the companies that we've been talking to that have made huge advancements. We're in level 3, we're starting to see sustainability being offered as a product or a service. It's beginning to become a differentiator for companies. And that's where more self-service tools and dashboards are getting created. The ultimate, the pinnacle in our minds is that it is a purpose-driven institution. And here, I just want to highlight, there's a lot of language here, but the biggest part, the biggest enabler for this level 4 is that sustainability becomes a concept that every single employee in an institution is focused in on, that there's alignment on your KPIs, even your bonuses, and we are starting to see companies really align to that and see themselves as meeting their sustainability goals by bringing in all of that enablement. But it also depends on the enablement of the individuals. So instituting training programs, sharing lots of resources, creating even employee resource groups where the dialogue that's even broader outside of their company gets discussed. The sort of the sky is the limit on this level for and the potential for impact. So I hope that motivates the folks that are on the call and to thinking of where it is that they fit into this spectrum of maturity. So just to kind of bring some summary to what it is that we're thinking about in terms of the demand themes of sustainability enablement. Arpita, I think we've got some amazing examples that we've heard through our research. It would be great for you to walk us through this.
Definitely, Rita. And I think in this slide, what we are covering is the key demand themes that we are seeing from the market for sustainability enablement services. And the first one that primarily stands out for me is we are at an accelerated pace moving towards sustainability 4.0. Be it the pandemic or the climate-induced disasters or the rise of environmentally conscious generation green, or the Gen Z as we call them, there is a great impetus on importance of sustainability permeating across the stakeholder mindset across all sectors of the global economy, and which brings me down to the regulatory mandates, which are more of a formal obligation. The governments across the countries are stepping up, and we have seen a rise in regulatory mandates across countries, be it China, be it EU, be it US, and enterprises need to step up their game when it comes to ensuring transparency and disclosures to make sure they are aligned with these regulatory mandates. And this is increasing the demand specifically for data and analytics with respect to your ESG requirements. And we have seen an entire ecosystem of vendors, such as the data providers and the technology vendors and service providers, that are collaborating with enterprises to ensure that the enterprises are able to disclose these requirements as per the regulatory mandates. There is also a growing investor as well as consumer push towards the organizations. So I think which touched upon the competitive differentiation in the slides before. I think it will be preaching to the choir when I talk about sustainable investing is at the forefront for all public companies as we are talking right now. The another aspect is the key challenge that I've seen enterprises facing in our conversations is there is no one global standard that all enterprises can adhere to. There are multiple standards, be it GRI, be it SASP, be it CDP, that are currently available for the organizations to report their ESG data. However, there is, owing to the lack of knowledge or the lack of technical expertise, they need to collaborate with service providers or technology vendors who can assist them in ensuring that smooth availability of these standards, and they are able to adhere to these standards as per industry requirements. And last but not the least, building sustainable value chain. I think one of the key use cases that we have seen during our research is the impetus from the enterprises to collaborate only with suppliers who have their, I would call them environmentally conscious or sustainability conscious suppliers. We have seen enterprises increasingly including ESG specific questions directly in the RFPs that they share with the suppliers. ESG requirements for the suppliers, for the suppliers to meet these ESG requirements is becoming essential for them to succeed in their or even sustain their operations going forward. I think Meenakshi, please go ahead.
So, thank you, Arpita. I think Rita has beautifully laid down the purpose framework that we were talking about. And I think the leading companies across industries have already started their journey towards being purpose driven. And they're leveraging technology for this, not only technology, but emerging technologies for this. I would like to highlight that I think a decade ago, the narrative around sustainability was still there, but we did not have the technology to execute on those goals. But now we have the technology to accelerate on those goals and be on the implementation side of the things. So as we can see on the screen, we have a few case studies here. A few that stands out for me, I'll talk about them. The one is Citibank using predictive analytics for fraud detection and making a safer banking environment for their customers. I think this is important because I think Rita will also agree with me that SDG 16 is usually overlooked, the peace, justice, and the strong institution SDG. But as the narrative around the data privacy is strengthening, a purpose-driven business, a people-driven business will make safer data channels and eliminate fraud and data leaks from their systems to make their business more sustainable. The other case study that stands out for me is the blockchain as a technology being adopted across industries to trace their supply chains. Nestle is doing that to ensure that their coffee is sourced in a green way and it's not tainted with child labor and forced labor. So we are seeing a lot of adoption of blockchain in sustainability, in supply chain traceabilities. The other use cases that we are seeing is H&M using AI to ensure that they're increasing their product life cycle by making tailor-made products for their customers. We have already talked about how significant IT sector's contribution is to GHG emissions, and Microsoft is moving towards cloud-based green data centers. Volkswagen is using IoT connected systems to reduce energy consumption. So the main point here is that technology is actually enabling sustainability across industries, and it's catering to a wide range of SDGs. Now, when we have to talk about enterprises, there are a few factors that they consider while they want to achieve their sustainability goals. The one method that they talk about, and if you can just move to the next slide, the one approach is being in-house, that is developing their own sustainability practice, trying to invest in Center of Excellence, GICs. And the other one is outsourcing that to a technology service provider. But what we are actually observing in the market is that there is a hybrid approach that enterprises want to take up, because they cannot be alone in this journey, and service providers are becoming a key to help them in their designing their roadmaps towards sustainability. And the focus of our report is on outsourcing model, where the service providers are enabling sustainability for their clients. Now,
all right, so now that we've shared quite a bit of information on what is in enabling sustainability, we'd like to make a special offer to companies that are on the call that are buying sustainability services. There's a lot of different KPIs that we think need to be looked at in terms of ESG. And if you are buying these services, you might have already seen an RFP tool. There's so many acronyms in this space, it's crazy. A tool that we've created, an accelerator tool for RFPs specifically, but there's about 80 questions that we suggest on there. So we are happy to have a conversation with you on some of these best practices on how that tool is getting used and which of the questions are being leveraged. Designing who it is within your organization is really thinking about it. What are the teams looking like? And better understanding the outsourcing aspect, the outsourcing landscape. We've sort of referenced it here, but you might have seen on some of our blogs that we were in the midst of conducting a peak assessment within sustainability technology enablement. So feel free to join us and have some conversations with us on this. And I think we can close this. Okay, it's been closed. Great. So you'll have another opportunity to participate in this if need be. Now let's get into the next section of our conversation, which is really looking at the actual service providers and talking more about what it is that they're doing and how it is that they're doing it. So again, a little more engagement just to make sure everybody's awake during this conversation. Kidding. We wanted to get a sense of what are your key challenges as you execute your sustainability strategy. We understand, and I think Meenakshi, you've been in on every single one of our briefings with the companies that are participating in the peak, as well as trying to convince those that are not ready to participate in the peak. Give us a sense of what you've been hearing and where you think this poll might land up as we wait for folks to vote.
Right, Rita. I think it's important to look at the buyer side and what buyers want. I think the problems that they're facing is, getting the right data. Like when we're talking about the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, measuring scope 3 emissions is actually a big problem because tracking that data, where that scope 3 emission is coming from, is a challenge. And service providers are definitely, bringing in their ideation and roadmaps for that. Then the second challenge that we are seeing is around talent. Buyers are, trying to find the right kind of talent to build their sustainability practice. Then bringing all the stakeholders together, because sustainability is still seen as a cost center. So bringing all those stakeholders, and that is where the service providers comes in, and they talk about their proof of concept and their proof of value, and then they're giving out tangible outcomes to these enterprises. Then there is what we can observe in the market is a gap between knowing and doing. Most of the executives believe that sustainability is important for their business, and they believe that it's linked to their brand image, but the technical know-how sometimes do not lie with them. So that's also a big challenge that they're facing. So these are the major challenges we are looking at on the buyer side.
I think we can close the poll now. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Meenakshi, but I think let's close the poll so that we can maybe see what the providers are telling us are their largest challenges. So, I think we got concurrence that the right data is definitely a challenge. But interestingly, the second point that you raised of talent is kind of measuring a little lower, actually nearly the lowest on the scale here in this crew. And maybe that's a little bit of self-selection. Maybe we've attracted those that have a lot of sustainability background, but I think that's really interesting because also the technical knowledge is low on the scoring. Yeah, maybe overcoming resistance, internal resistance. To me, that's also very interesting, and lack of awareness. These are sort of tied together. Lack of awareness of what the opportunities are. Yeah, I think this is interesting and will feed well into some of the research that we've been seeing as well.
I think, Rita, this is quite intriguing, and I think this also freshens up our perspective towards the market, what we have been listening and what we are getting in the polls. I think that will just build on our market knowledge. Let's talk about the market itself. Like, how does this market looks like, right? So, in the sustainability services market, the service providers are helping their clients, whether it's the planet-related engagement or the people-related engagement, but we are seeing a heavy tilt towards the planet-led engagement. So in our analysis, what we found was that there 65% of the clients' engagement that the service providers are having are planet-led, and 35% are people-led. But pandemic has already thrown light on the fact that businesses needs to be responsible towards communities, their employees, and other stakeholders. And I think that, the percentage on the people-led engagements is definitely going to rise in the coming years. Now let's talk about the geography spread. This looks interesting. So the largest chunk of this market goes to North America and Europe. The APAC is catching up, and then there's the rest of the world. But Europe is still leading. It's the client spread that we are seeing is 42% in Europe and 40% in North America. But there is a huge difference of the quality of engagement that we are seeing in these two geographies. And European clients are having more purpose-driven journeys. They're having more purpose-driven engagements because definitely their regulatory frameworks, their mindset around sustainability is much more matured than North America at this point of time. So that's the difference that we are seeing right now. And sooner or later, this gap needs to close because everybody will be moving towards being purpose-driven in future. When we have to look at the client spread across industries, the major industries that are adopting sustainability services is manufacturing, energy, BFSI, and public sector. What follows is basically retail, electronics, and healthcare, and travel and transport. So when we are talking about ESG consultancy, when we are talking about the implementation part, this is the client spread that we are seeing across the industries. Now let us talk about the use cases and the major use cases that we are seeing in this market, the top 5 that we have analyzed. Now, if you can just see on the screen that we have 5 use cases here, and the first one is around ESG data reporting, auditing, and compliance, because that's the low-hanging fruits for the service providers. And I think compliance at the end of the day is the major key element of driving sustainability at your organization. So whether it's on the enterprise end or the service provider end, the data reporting is becoming extremely important, and it has implication across planet, people, and profit. So the service providers are creating dashboarding platforms for their clients for measuring their ESG footprint, auditing that, and then maybe analyzing that data to help them set further goals. The next in the line is net zero strategy and risk assessment. And there is a lot of consultancy strategy that is involved here, because enterprise clients, what they need is a strategy, a roadmap to achieve a lower carbon footprint. And that's what the service providers are doing for them. They are analyzing climate risk. They are setting up a roadmap for them. The next line is EHS services, and it is also having a lot of momentum in specific industries. For example, in chemical industries, the EHS services are gaining a lot of traction. The health and environment, health and safety measures, the compliance, the dashboarding of this data is actually important. It again has implication across people, planet, and profit. We have life cycle assessment and around green buildings. So there is something called smart buildings and green buildings that enterprises are looking at to reduce their energy footprint, to become more green, to have an infrastructure that makes them net zero in future. And certifications and life cycle assessment around these buildings, around smart cities, is also an important use case that we are observing in the market. The next line, and it's basically have large implication on the people aspect of sustainability. It's the accessibility services. And I remember a beautiful quotation from one of the briefings. So today, what is called an assistive technology will become a mass technology tomorrow. So a lot of leading players have started investing in assistive technologies, making digital products more accessible to the wider range of the population. And I think making applications, website, and other digital services more accessible is one main thing that we are seeing in the planet-led aspect of the ESG. And leading players are also developing business cases around them and generating ROI for their clients. So these are the top use cases that we are looking at. Now, let us look at the next slide, which is around the framework of what is the approach towards the sustainability that service providers are taking. And I request Arpita to shed some light on that.
Thanks a lot, Meenakshi and Rita. And I think in the last few slides, apart from presenting what we have seen in the market, what's the market size, what are the trends across industries. Another key aspect that we have covered is a buyer sentiment. So what we have seen in the our market conversations is all the use cases that you have seen in the previous slide, and all the engagements, the 65%, 35% planet versus people. Most of these engagements we have seen are end-to-end engagements where enterprises are looking for a strategic partner in a service provider who can not just guide them in consulting and designing these engagements, but also implement, manage, as well as report and govern. So in order to step up to the enterprise demand, we have seen, based on our research, especially the leading global GSIs in the space, they are taking a multi-lever approach to build those capabilities to address those demands for enterprises. We have highlighted 4 key levers that we see the leaders adopting in the space. The first lever is the internal capability enhancement, which is building your own internal proprietary IP and most of this IP, as we have highlighted, is across the full stack capabilities. There is also an impetus towards building domain specific or vertical specific IP. We have seen multiple service providers, be it TCS, be it Accenture, creating and building IP that are focused on a specific industry, be it retail, be it agro farming, be it manufacturing. And there's also persona-based solutioning. Considering the knowledge and the expertise in this space is still at a novelty space, we have seen service providers building dashboards, building engagements, trying to make the engagement as customized to the key stakeholder involved from the enterprise as possible, be it the CMO, be it the CFO, or be it the manufacturing head from the company. The other aspect that we have seen is partnership, and I cannot emphasize further on the importance of the partnerships that we see service providers building. There is the sustainability vendor ecosystem is currently evolving fast, and we anticipate that it will continue to evolve further. When I talk about partnerships for your usual IT engagement, it might be restricted to a big tech player, to a consulting player. However, in the sustainability space, there are multiple sectors within the vendor ecosystem that enterprises and service providers need to collaborate with to build the right capabilities, considering the domain expertise needed in this space. So when I talk about partners, if I can just call out some examples, for example, if I just talk about the big tech ecosystem, the SAPs and Salesforce of the world, if I talk about the data and analytics, which was the key challenge that we see enterprises facing, there's a growing ecosystem of software vendors, data vendors, and rating agencies who are collaborating extensively with service providers to help enterprises with their ESG agendas, sustainability agendas. And apart from that, we also have leading organizations such as GRI, CDP, who are coming up with frameworks, and along with collaborating with service providers to ensure that these frameworks is easier for the enterprises. Other key aspects of organizations or partnerships that we are seeing are small collaborations between leading GSIs or leading technology vendors. If I can just call out the Green Software Foundation, small will be a wrong word to define the Green Software Foundation, where the leading technology vendors are coming together along with the service providers to idealize how through software development can be more green. So these are some of the partnerships that we see service providers extensively building. Another aspect is acquisitions. We have seen leading global service providers on an acquisition spree, and most of these acquisitions are directed towards end-to-end, building the end-to-end capabilities, as I highlighted. They're equally distributed towards the consulting aspect of sustainability, implementation aspect of sustainability, and data and reporting as well. And the key idea is to build capabilities inorganically and fast so that you are able to meet the enterprise demand, considering that sustainability is more of a demand-driven market right now, and enterprises want to do things fast in the sustainability arena. And we have seen service providers proactively acquiring niche sustainability firms across the value chain to meet up this demand. And last but not the least is the talent aspect of sustainability, we have seen global service providers extensively hiring dedicated roles, be it global, be it regional, or be it industry leaders who are focused on sustainability aspects. There's also extensive upskilling exercises happening within these organizations to have a sustainability ready workforce that can deliver on these demands. I think without further ado, I would just like to give it back to Rita. I think we have talked a lot about the service provider landscape, and I think we should offer something to the service providers as well.
Great idea. But I do want to ask if you have questions, please do put them into the Q&A tab. We did receive a lot of great questions when folks were registering for the webinar, which we will go through, but we'd also love to receive your live questions. So a little while ago, we made a direct call to the folks that are buying the services of sustainability services. Now we want to do a shout out to those that are actually providing the services. We'd love to have a conversation with you and do a briefing to talk about what we've learned from our study. So if we can launch the question or the ask for the complimentary briefing. There's already been a lot of conversations as we've learned, and I think the fact that we have so many people on this webinar shows that there is information, and also the very packed slides that we've had, that we've learned a lot from this peak assessment that we've been doing. And Arpita, I think we're getting pretty close, right? When do we think that that's going to get published?
We're almost at the end of our assessment, and after some final checks and processes, we should be able to publish the peak by end of this month. And we really can't wait to share our research, extensive 3 to 4 month research exercise that we have taken, to share it with our audience and the participants and their clients.
Not just extensive, first of its kind, right? I think there's a lot of conversation around ESG and sustainability, but specifically focusing in on technology as an enabler for that, and not technology in some esoteric terms, but very specific to our industry. I think there's a lot of interesting work that's come out of that assessment, and many great conversations that are just getting started. So I think we can close the poll. Okay, we've already closed it. Thank you. And again, if there's questions or desire to participate in these services, or take advantage of these complimentary conversations, please do reach out to us. There's no, if you missed the Q&A, the poll that just came up. So I think we can get into some summarizing of what it is that we've been talking about for the last 50 minutes.
Right. Thank you, Rita. So let us look at what are the implications of our assessment and the sustainable services market on the service providers. Basically, they need to firstly carve out a position in the market by integrating their capabilities, because right now the capabilities look siloed. So bringing a brand image out of it and letting the enterprise clients know that there exists a unique practice for this would help them out. Second is, and this is, I think it's one of the most important element, is to build a robust partnership ecosystem. So the enterprise clients have a great amount of choice to choose from. They need to partner with niche ESG players, data vendors, and even universities for that matter, to gauge more understanding of the market and gain more capabilities around these services. Next is to invest in flexible pricing model. And I think this has been reiterated by all the buyers, that they have projects of all scales and we have buyers on all scales. So a smaller project would require flexible pricing. And when service providers have such models around pricing, it would really help enterprises clients to go forward with these plans and get all the stakeholders on board. The last is to focus on retaining the right kind of talent, because the talent in the sustainability services industry is a mix of the one having a technological background as well as having an ESG related domain expertise. So these are the implications for the service providers in this industry. And Arpita can explain what are the implications on the buyers.
Meenakshi, I think that very well covers the provider sentiment. And now coming to the buyer sentiment again, the key implications for the buyers involved, although the current focus, as we highlighted multiple times, currently heavy, it's slightly tilted towards the environment aspect of sustainability, but based on our conversations, based on our research, the key finding that we have is that the social aspect of sustainability needs to come under the lens for enterprises in order to stay competitive in their businesses going forward. The another aspect is the technology. The role of technology as the key enabler of sustainability is evolving and continues to evolve fast. I think the case studies that you saw on the slides that we discussed in the previous section do not do justice to the plethora of use cases that emerging digital technologies are are playing a role in enabling sustainability for these enterprises. The other aspect is when enterprises start on this journey, we anticipate that they will face multiple challenges, and it's a saying in our within our team that you cannot do sustainability alone. Either you do it through even if you try to do it through your in-house teams or you collaborate with service providers, you will have to collaborate with a plethora of vendors and the entire vendor ecosystem, and it's right there available for your benefit to help you on your sustainability journey. And with the narrative, I think I already covered this in the first point a little bit, that with the narrative around sustainability gaining momentum amongst all the stakeholders, be it your consumers, be it your investors, be it your employees, being socially responsible has to becoming a purpose-driven enterprise has to be on your agenda to truly thrive and become a purpose-driven enterprise. I think with that, we have, I hope we have closed, the session has been useful to you and we have covered some insights that were useful for your organizations. And with that, I would like to give it over back to Rita.
Thanks so much, Arpita. I think we've got some great questions that have come through in the Q&A. And I think that we have a little bit of time, unfortunately, not a lot. So one of the questions that we have from Stephen Cha is, how are premiums being charged for ESG initiatives? I want to understand how ESG would help grow the top line items in terms of growing revenue. And I think that's a great question because it fits straight into our purpose framework of there needing to be a profit case, a business case and a profit motive around these initiatives. Meenakshi, do you want to give a shot at answering that question?
Sure, Rita. I think when we talk about the premiums, it also depends on the project that is there. So whether it's planet driven or people driven, I think there is a scale of the premiums and there is no average value that we can derive at this point of time. And I think Arpita has also been involved in this. Like we have discussed this question, and Arpita, if you want to add any insight to this.
Definitely, Rita. And when we talk about premiums being charged for sustainability, I think it's majorly one of the weapons. Sorry for calling it a weapon, but it's one of the aspects being used, especially by the B2C companies. As we already pointed out, there's a rising population of Gen Z and millennials who are very focused on using environmentally conscious products and services. It's not just about consuming this product. It's also about they want to associate with only those organizations that are environmentally conscious or people conscious. So we have seen organizations like H&M or organizations like Nestle. So when you charge a premium, it could be through risk. For example, we have seen a large CPG vendor charging premium to its customers for responsible sourcing. So the key messaging that they take to the market that is all our raw materials are responsibly sourced. So that can be one of the areas where you can charge premium from your consumers. And there will be a population of the population segment ready to pay premium for those products. Another aspect could be smart manufacturing, that products are manufactured with minimum use of water or energy. So these kind of initiatives are extensively being used by enterprises, especially in the B2C arena, to charge premium for their products and services, to increase the revenue, the top line of their offerings.
We're starting to run out of time, but I think there's a few real techies in the audience that have some great questions. First being what's the sustainability use case to be considered for cloud infrastructure? And just to add on to that, another question that we received about ML being playing a role in automating sustainability reporting. So really kind of getting into the weeds and specifics of how technology can be that enabler. Arpita or Meenakshi, do you have some insight into that?
Charita, I'd like to take a shot at that and would request Meenakshi to add on if possible. I think I got very excited by listening to the cloud question, and sustainable IT remains one of the key use cases that we see in the sustainability enablement arena. A lot of the enterprises are associating their digital transformation strategy to their sustainability strategy. What they want to achieve through their digital transformation is sustainability. And when I say digital transformation, a large part of it involves moving their legacy infrastructure and applications and servers and devices to cloud. Through these, and we're living in the era where we have hyperscalers like Google, Microsoft, and AWS, who are extensively focusing on how their data centers are completely renewable energy driven, how they are building these green data centers, so to say, that are enabling organizations to decrease their scope 2, scope 3 emissions. So I think cloud and cloud vendors are a very important aspect. Moving towards cloud, migrating to cloud, modernizing your existing infrastructures is one of the key use cases that we have seen in our sustainable IT conversations within the broader sustainability arena space. And the other aspect that you were talking about, machine learning and AI, I think we cannot emphasize enough the role AI and ML are playing in enabling organizations to collect the right data, identify the right data, and report the right data across their, be it their scope 1, be it their scope 2, across their entire value chain, from product development to product and to the entire product life cycles. Technologies such as IoT, AI, and ML are increasingly playing a very important role in helping organizations step up their reporting game, and how once you have the right data in place, once you have the right matrix in place, how you can manage it better to decrease the emissions. Meenakshi, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think on the AI and ML part, I think we are seeing a lot of case studies around those two technologies, because a lot of experience management, sustainability driven experience management is using AI and ML to, better the employee experience or the community experience. We are also, I think we are very short of time, but I think not only in collecting and organizing data, but AI and ML has a role in predicting what's going to be there, and predicting how the ESG metrics are going to change in future, so that the roadmap can be built towards sustainability. So I think we are out of time. Rita, over to you.
I think we are out of time. Unfortunately, there's so much more to talk about, and I think it would be great to stay engaged. Please do write to us. Our email addresses are there if there's further questions, and we'll get back to the questions, get back to you if you asked a question and we weren't able to address it. There's also other ways to stay engaged. We've been blogging about this concept on a variety of specifics and interesting topics, as well as very specific research that you can access from our reports portal. There's still a lot to say and a lot to do in this space. The word that I like to put out there is co-opetition. We talked about partnership, yes, but we do also think that with all of the different things that need to be done, whether it's getting a more inclusive society or it's figuring out the climate change challenges that we have, it's going to take a village, as they said. So with that, I hand it back over to our facilitator from Zoom, Rafael.
Thank you to Rita, Arpita, Meenakshi, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar.